Hi folks, Dr. Payne here from Dr. Payne Effects, and this is another episode of Good, Better, Best, the only pedal review show where we show you what the pedals will sound like through a beginner's amp, a moderate amp, all the way up to the boutique amp. So you can hear what the pedal sounds like in the amp closest to yours. Now, we're actually going to be doing a three-part episode where we're going to be comparing three different pedals. I'm really excited about this. So, drum roll. We are doing shoegaze-in-a-box pedals. That's right, we are going to be comparing three shoegaze-in-a-box pedals. Interestingly enough, each of these has a different price point, ranging all the way from just over $200 all the way up to around $400 new. So we've got good, better, and best on our amps, good, better, and best in terms of price on our pedals, and we'll see what's happening. Now you may be asking yourself, well, what is the criteria for something to be a shoegaze-in-a-box pedal? Well, for the three pedals that we chose this time, there were two main criteria. One, they had to have some form of distortion built in, and two, they had to have reverb. Now, two of these pedals are specifically targeted towards shoegaze audience, and we'll talk about those in a minute. While one of them, although not specifically towards shoegaze, does mention shoegaze applications in their advertising, and all around is a really great pedal for shoegaze because it not only has fuzz and reverb, but also delay. So let's go ahead and get into these pedals. Welcome back. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to the three pedals that we will be going through in this series of videos. The first one is one of the oldest of the three. This is the Collision Devices Blackhole Symmetry. Now, as you can see, the Blackhole Symmetry is a 3-foot switch pedal. It has an input and output and 9 volts negative, and a whole bunch of different features. So with this pedal, we are looking at independently controllable reverb, delay, and fuzz. So our first switch here is the ergosphere, which is going to control the delay. Now, the delay parameters are controlled by these knobs on the outside. You can see the parameters include mix, time, feedback, modulation, and speed. And we're going to go over what each one of those knobs does in the demo. Second, we have the event horizon, the edge of the center of the black hole. And that is controlled by these 4 knobs here, which include echo, radiancy, pitch, and mix of the reverb. And then finally, we have the singularity, which is solely controlled by this one giant knob at the middle. And that is the fuzz. The knob controls the volume of the fuzz. So we have got, again, independent delay, reverb, and fuzz all in a single package. Rather giant single package, but really, really awesome form factor. The next pedal on our list should be no stranger to anyone who has ever typed shoegaze guitar pedal onto Google. That is the Keeley Loomer. Now, this pedal is a 2-in-1 pedal with 1,000 different features, so I'm going to go over each one of them quickly, and then we will see more in the demo. So, it is based on the song Loomer by My Bloody Valentine, and it really does have a lot of features which can give you all sorts of those different classic shoegaze sounds. So on this side, we have the reverb, and on this side, we have the fuzz. And each one of those has several different modes and adjustable features. So on the reverb side, we have 3 different types of reverbs. We have a focus reverb, which is similar to the soft focus reverb like you can get from the Catlin Bread pedal. Very, very good sounds that you can get. Really, really cool based on an early Yamaha studio effect. The second is, of course, can't have a shoegaze dedicated pedal without a reverse reverb. Really give you that Kevin Shields' My Bloody Valentine sound. And then finally, it has a really cool hall reverb, which has, they describe it as almost a chorus effect. It has this really neat ambiance. You kind of have to hear it to describe it, to understand it. So we'll make sure to take a look at that in the demo. Next on the reverb side, we have 4 different controls. Up here we have the blend control, which controls how much of the reverb is blended in with your signal. We have the decay, which controls quite a few things with this reverb, but in general, how long the reverb will last. We have warmth, which can go from bright to dark. And then finally, we have the depth of the effect, whether that be the chorus effect in the hall, how quickly the reverse comes on in the reverse, and how extreme the warbles are in the soft focus. One thing I forgot to mention is that the reverse reverb also has an additional feature where it sounds, adds modulation to sound just like the trim system on a Jazzmaster. So if you want that Kevin Shields sound and you don't have a Jazzmaster to play it with, Keeley's got you covered. Next, on the fuzz side, I have a classic, I definitely say reads silicon fuzz. We have 3 different controls as well as a tone toggle switch. On the left side, we have the filter, which acts as a low pass filter. That's going to be your tone of your fuzz. Then you have the fuzz itself. Even with the fuzz all the way turned down, this is not a subtle fuzz, but you can get it from a little bit raspy all the way to full-throated fuzz. And then finally, we have the level control, which is your volume. Now, in terms of tone, we have flat, which is going to give you flat EQ all the way. We have a full, which is going to give you some boosted mids and bass. And then finally, we have the classic mid-scooped big muff sound. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't also mention that in addition to allowing you to have this reverb and fuzz independent, it also has a switch on top that allows you to switch the order of the effects. So if you want those really classic shoegaze reverse reverb into full-on fuzz, all you do is hit the switch And now the reverb will be first in the signal chain and the fuzz will be second. Say you want to go off into soft focus reverb, maybe more subtle fuzz into the reverb, hit the switch again. Now the fuzz is going to be first in the chain. Finally, we have 9-volt DC in and out, and it also has expression control, which I have never used, but I'm sure it's pretty freaking cool. So that is the Loomer from Keeley, and that will be the second pedal that we will be looking at. Now finally, we have a brand new pedal from Walrus Audio. This is the Walrus Audio Melee. Now, unlike the other two pedals, instead of a fuzz circuit, we actually have a distortion circuit, which I'd probably liken to a rat. Get a little bit subtle, maybe some slight breakup, all the way to full-on fuzzy sound. In addition, we have a reverb built in, which I'll really have to explain this in depth. This is not quite like any pedal you have seen before. So let's start going over the controls. On this side, we have the bypass control, which obviously press to turn on, press to turn off. And on the other side, we have a momentary switch, which can be either momentary or latching, that is labeled sustain. And what that's going to do is add the tails to your reverb and let them go on as long as the decay parameter is set. Once you let it go, it will wind back down to back where the decay parameter was. So, in addition to those controls, we have toggle switches. Similar to the Keeley, we have a switch that gives you drive into reverb or reverb into drive. We also have a switch for decay and for tone. The tone controls, I would say, are pretty similar to those on the Keeley, going from more mid-scooped fuzz all the way to full-throated fuzz. The decay goes from pretty short decay all the way to full lush decay. Now, there are also a number of other controls that you can program by pressing some combination of the foot switches. So if I were to say want to change this to a reverse reverb, what I would do is hit both of these simultaneously. The color of the light over the sustain will change, and it will be the next reverb mode. There are 3 reverb modes on this. One is an octave down reverb, it gives you a nice dark reverb sound. Another is what they call ambient reverb, really lush sort of wall of sound. And then finally, of course, they had to include a reverse reverb. In addition to that, you can add modulation. You do this by holding down the bypass switch and then controlling the decay switch. The decay switch will control the level of modulation as you are holding down the bypass. Now, the main feature, of course, besides this nifty volume control, is the giant joystick. So this joystick control has 2 axes. The vertical axis, or y-axis if you will, controls the distortion, with it being all the way down. Gives you little to no distortion, pretty clean signal, and all the way to the top gives you full-on crazy fuzz. Now, our x-axis, or horizontal axis, controls our reverb. All the way to the left, we're not going to have any reverb in our mix, and then all the way to the right, it's going to be full mix reverb. And you can put it anywhere in between. So if I want to max my reverb and distortion, throw it up there. If I want very minimal effect, throw it on down there. And of course, we have input, output jacks, 9-volt DC. So that is the Walrus Audio Melee, and that will be the third pedal that we are looking at in this series. So because there are so many features, I've decided to break this up into 3 different videos. The first video will be with the good amp, the second with the better amp, and the third with the best amp. So look for those to come out very shortly.